Like back at it again with the white vans, man.
Like I thought we had a paisley van, man.
Is that what that's called?
Like the flower pattern. Yeah.
Okay.
Like it was.
So what does that say about Brad Paisley?
He's
He's
flowery and colorful.
I guess.
and shaped like bacteria. That's what paisley pattern always reminds me of.
Yeah,
Like
like
just
with
the-
little hairs on the side.
Yeah, it just looks like bacteria.
Does it help him swim?
That is probably their primary sensory organ and locomotion means.
Yeah.
I'm
So
not-
what I'm hearing here is that Brad Paisley has lots of cilia.
That was the word. I knew there was a specific word for it, but it was escaping me.
It's a silly word.
Actually, I mean, a lot of people have probably done this, but looking at pond water under a microscope is very fun. All sorts of cool critters.
Amoeba.
Yep, amoeba, and then lots of paramecium, and like the weird stuff with like the hairy arm things they use. To
Brad Paisley.
Yeah, Brad Paisley. It's quite visible under there, and I think and there's like this very, 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 very small insects. It's very quiet.
Who
If
us?
you're very, very lucky, you might find a tardigrade.
Yeah, those are pretty cool. And apparently built like tanks.
Yep. They can survive in the vacuum of space. Among the only living creatures that can do that.
I think they found bacteria that can survive in a nuclear reactor, I want to say. Which is kind of nuts. But not altogether that surprising.
Yeah.
But I don't know, guys. I'm a little conflicted about something. I hope our listeners will forgive us, but we're bringing them something from 2020 in the world's most perfect year, 2021, as we all know.
Yes.
This is our New Year's Eve episode, so we are recording this in the dreaded year of 2020, which I mean, it's not too terrible of a year. I mean, it's the year that brought you this podcast.
I mean, yeah, that a lot of stuff happened for certain this year.
Mm-hmm.
I for one got a sister and a brother-in-law,
Yep.
or a future brother-in-law out of the deal. So
I got a brother-in-law out of the deal, so about halfway there.
So yeah,
I became a seminarian in 2020. So
There you go.
Made the first step in a larger world, as it were.
And yeah, we got the podcast, and this has been fun. I've enjoyed doing it.
That movie I just referenced, I just realized that came out 5 years ago.
Star Wars: A New Hope.
No,
Your first step into a larger world. That's from Star Wars: A New Hope.
oh, I was thinking like they stuck.
They may have referenced something like that in like the seventh one or something.
Oh yeah, I think that might have been like a reference or something like that.
But the original line was from like 1979, I believe.
Right.
No, that's not. No, it wasn't 79. It was like maybe it was 79. I forget exactly. I'm a bad fan.
That 1979.
it is a little crazy to think that The Force Awakens came out almost 6 years ago.
Yeah.
It came out winter of 2014, right? So like
I think so.
as the year was rolling into 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it has been out for 6 years now.
and we went through that whole ordeal
And we went through that whole ordeal.
of watching the
6 years and 5
6
movies
years
and
of unspoken cinematic abuse. Oh goodness, dearie me. Honestly, like a little piece of me, having finished the second season of The Mandalorian, a little piece of me is like, man, if they could just keep making this kind of stuff and gradually people can just forget that the prequel or the sequel trilogy happened, the world would be a better place.
If they could just hand all creative control of Star Wars to Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, literally everybody would be happy.
Right.
Those guys just know how to make good Star Wars, and Jon Favreau knows how to make good Marvel. He's just like, that guy's good at making good franchises.
He's good. He's a good guy. I like Jon Favreau.
He makes me happy.
He even appeared in one of his...
I think he do a cameo on like all of his movies.
Well, he was...
Well, he literally had a part in the Iron Man.
Right.
Yeah, as
but
Happy
I mean,
Hogan.
like he had Happy Hogan, and then he was like the Doctor in Elf. And
Oh yeah, he was.
I was told I read
I forgot
that
he did
like that Mandalorian in season 1 with like the big minigun, that was Jon Favreau, I think.
Well, there's enough crazy alien makeup and stormtrooper costumes to hide people in, so
So
wouldn't be surprised.
has he really directed much beyond those two things?
I don't think
well,
he's been
he did the
director.
Jungle Book, I think,
Oh yeah,
like
that
the
was,
remake.
And
It was
that's why it
mediocre.
was kind of the best of the live action.
Yeah,
things
it
that
wasn't
exist.
terrible.
It still wasn't great.
I mean,
No.
when mediocre is the best that you can put out in terms of Disney remakes,
Because the whole concept
If
of the
it's
live action things,
fundamentally flawed.
Yes,
If
you just can't capture what the cartoons made. You can't capture what was special about
like,
them.
what should a good remake set out to do? Why would you want to remake
Is
something?
there such thing as a good remake?
To like
Yeah.
to set
The
aside
Thing.
any cynicism.
Oh, sure.
What do you do with a remake? Assuming that there is a good reason to in the first place.
I feel like
What do you do? Do you attempt to like totally recapture the original essence of the thing, or make it its own thing set in the same vague general area?
I feel
Well,
like
'cause-
if you just copy and paste what worked before, recapture what worked before, then that's
It doesn't work
You're
because
creating
the-
a redundant product.
the medium is different, because like the whole deal with like CGI talking animals, if it's not Narnia, it doesn't work as well to me. Like it made sense with like the cartoon animals, and then you have what's the kid's name in the Jungle Book, Mowgli. Yeah, like that makes sense, and like they managed to make it not look too freaky looking in the Jungle Book. But I mean, it's just like it doesn't work as well as like the cartoon animals did, because
Like, the whole premise of live action is that it's supposed to be like plausibly real.
yeah. But you have all
And
these talking
then you-
animals.
Not only that, you have singing Christopher Walken animals,
Mm-hmm.
which is like that doesn't belong there.
Didn't like a year or not too long after, didn't like Andy Serkis have like a Jungle Book movie? Or am I thinking
He might have been involved with the motion capture on some of
it
the
was like called
characters.
Mowgli? It was the movie called Mowgli, I
Oh.
think, that came out like a year after, and since it was like had finally gone to public domain or something like that, they
Huh.
made another one.
I was not aware of that.
So it's kind of like
I think the one live action Disney remake that I moderately that I like respect on a minimal level is Maleficent, because at least it tried to do something a little different. I don't particularly like that movie, but at least it tried to do something different and interesting with the characters and the setting. Whereas Beauty and the Beast didn't really do anything but paste some deleted scenes and songs in there.
yeah,
And
Other than that, it's a one to
Mulan just kind of destroyed.
took all of the
Everything.
fun out of the
it's like this middle of the road where like the cartoon was really fantastical and they could have taken it into a very realistic, historically grounded way,
I mean,
but
unless
they didn't. They kind of hit the middle spot, which doesn't work for either
unless
side.
any members of the Chinese Communist Party are listening, it was the best movie ever made, 100%. All hail the central government or whatever. But yeah, it sucked. Here in America, we can have opinions.
Here in America, we don't have Winnie the Pooh telling us what to do.
And now we've really guaranteed that our podcast will never appear in China.
Didn't we make this reference once before? Like Winnie the
Probably.
Pooh, who definitely doesn't exist and certainly looks nothing like a certain world leader. Oh man.
I bet the movie Christopher Robin, that live action remake, was banned in
Yeah.
China.
Or they went to
Like
great
everything
lengths.
Winnie the Pooh has been
I think they
on the
completely wiped it
kibosh
from the
since,
internet.
since
Since the
people
meme.
since the meme.
Yeah. It's like, geez. I mean, there are people who can't take a joke, but that's like completely erasing it from your country's internet. That's
Dictators generally can't take a joke.
Yeah. Sucks. More like, oh, no, I'm not going to say it. More like haters. I'm not going to say the. Anyway.
Speaking of things we will say, though,
Um.
are we about?
Yeah, well, we're the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Riley.
Oh, well, Happy New Year, everybody.
If you're listening to this in the new year, which you probably are because we're recording at the last possible minute of the last year, so
I mean,
Well, it's not the last
really. We have like a
possible.
solid.
But certainly
4.5
not in time for
hours.
anybody but us
should
to
we
listen
just
to it.
keep recording until it hits midnight? Do
Oh,
the
man.
countdown on here.
It's going to be
we've
a
got
long podcast.
That'd
5
be,
hours.
A 4.5 hour episode.
Yeah, that I don't know how we would. I mean, we would find a way to keep talking, but it would lose any semblance of substance.
Just
Oh,
start
yeah, for
playing
sure.
a
They
game or
typically do,
narrating what
but-
we're doing, but like
Imagine 4 of our episodes all at once. That's
not
what
at
that
the
would
same
be.
we
time,
really-
one after the other.
We really tail off like half the time anyway and just
Right.
get so horribly off track for one thing.
Yeah, that's true. Like,
It,
trust
it
us,
might
you-
be amusing to do one time, just like have a marathon episode where we just go off.
Oh man,
I don't know. No one would listen to that, but it would be
No.
fun to do.
is that going to be our Lord of the Rings episode where we just dive into everything?
Just have that as a Patreon reward.
Oh,
If you like us enough to pay us, you can listen to us for 4 hours.
Or there's like the regular show, and then the little bit after the show where Larry comes out. Wait,
The regular show, when you said that, I pictured
the regular show.
the
yeah.
bird and the raccoon guy.
and the gumball machine. That's their boss.
Yeah.
Oh, we already derailed the intro. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Riley.
Have we already introduced ourselves?
We
I feel like we
did.
might have.
We
No, I said we are the
definitely
Palladium
did.
Papists, but I don't.
We
remember.
definitely
No. We
said our
definitely
names.
introduced ourselves.
We've
introduced
done that
ourselves
twice now.
Oh,
Speaking
well, at
of-
any rate, today we are talking about the NBC TV show The Good Place. Since we want to start 2021 off
in a good place.
In a good place.
In a
yeah.
good place.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Riley's the only one that's watched the show. I watched the pilot in my rhetoric class sophomore year, which was probably around the time it was like initially coming out.
It first started airing in 2016, so
So
that
it was
would have
pretty.
been-
It was a new
It was
show.
the second season.
Yeah.
So there's how many seasons of
There
it?
are 4 total.
And has it concluded or
It
is
has concluded very definitively,
Got it.
irreversibly. There is a spin-off series I found out today as
Oh.
I was doing some research,
interesting?
but it
Tell
focuses
us
on
about this television show.
I will tell you about The Good Place. So, our story begins with a woman named Eleanor Shellstrop, played by Kristen Bell, who you might know is the voice of Anna from Frozen. Waking up on a couch in like a lobby waiting room type thing, and she sees these words on the wall in front of her that say, "Everything is fine," in nice, friendly green lettering.
For whatever reason, the Book of Daniel popped into my head when you said letters written on the wall. Like,
The writing's on the wall, man.
yeah. Anyways, continue.
And shortly after, an older gentleman named Michael walks out and says, "Eleanor, come on in." And Michael, who's played by Ted Danson,
It's got the more
informs
square cut face I've ever
he's
seen.
he's got such an angular face. It's crazy.
Like not like PS1 angular, but just like man,
just-
that guy is like very
Chiseled for a
chiseled
70-year-old
face.
dude.
Yeah. Like imagine, yeah. Anyway, that was my. We're going completely off my first impressions and Riley's complete impressions of the show. And
Michael informs Eleanor that she has died and
Oh.
is now in the good place, which is reserved for the top of the top best people to have ever lived. We're talking like a tenth of a percent of all the people get into the good place. This is very exclusive. And he's like recounting all of the things she did on Earth, and she was a death row defense lawyer trying to save inmates from being unjustly executed, and a great philanthropist in Ukraine, and all this stuff. And she's like, "Yeah, okay, cool, great, yeah, mm-hmm."
Mhm.
And she is shortly thereafter introduced to her soulmate, which everyone in this afterlife in the good place has.
Mm-hmm.
And his name is Chidi Anagonye. He is a professor of moral philosophy and ethics on Earth before he died.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have a little discussion, and Eleanor confides in Chidi that she, in fact, does not belong in the good place.
Mm-hmm.
She was kind of a dirtbag on Earth, and all of these things that...
And not the person that they
Not the
thought
person
she
that
was.
they think she is. And Chidi, being a professor of ethics and moral philosophy, agonizes over this moral quandary about what should be done.
Mm-hmm.
And so they talk about it a little bit. They consult Janet, the omnipotent, omniscient entity. She's not a girl. She's not a robot. It's kind of hard to define what Janet is, but she looks like a human being. So they consult Janet, who knows everything that there has ever been to know.
Mm-hmm.
And the bad place is the one thing she can't talk to them about. So that doesn't really help.
Oh.
They can't figure out whether or not the bad place is really so bad. Because Eleanor understandably does not want to go to the bad place, even though she probably belongs there. And then Janet plays an audio clip of the bad place, and it's just people screaming viciously. It's like, okay, yeah, definitely don't want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of like, all right, we're going to keep this under wraps and do our best not to get found out. So they go around and meet a few more of the residents of the neighborhood, including Tahani Al-Jamil, who is a philanthropist and fundraiser for various charities on Earth, and a Buddhist monk named Jianyu, who is Tahani's soulmate, and he has taken a vow of silence and never says anything. He maintains it even during the afterlife. So they have a little party at Tahani's house for welcoming everyone to the neighborhood, and Eleanor is being her bad Eleanor self and becoming intoxicated and eating all of the jumbo shrimp that there is at the party.
And saying fork all the time.
And yes, you're not allowed to curse in the bad place. So
Or
they
the
have
good
lots of
place.
fun euphemisms that get used whenever Eleanor tries to swear, like fork and bullshit
Yep.
and bench.
See, as I understand it, it's like sort of automatically like she's trying to say these things, and like
Yeah.
the good place is forcing her to say it, kind of like how in Doctor Who or whatever, I think the TARDIS like automatically translates you into whatever the language is or something like that. That's what it
Right.
reminded me of.
And
Mhm.
anyone speaking any language gets translated to the language of the listener.
Ah,
Just
okay.
because people come
Wait, are
from
they in the
different
TARDIS?
walks of life.
Because it's kind of death, so everybody dies.
Right. And so the next day, like, things start going catastrophically but strangely wrong. There are these, like, jumbo shrimp flying through the sky and
Giant ladybugs.
giant ladybugs and all sorts of trash and junk that Eleanor variously encountered or strewn about or whatever. So it's like pretty obvious that whatever like bad things Eleanor does in the good place are causing bad things to occur, which
Mhm.
should not happen.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael is like, yeah, this is a very experimental neighborhood. Normally the architect, which is Michael, doesn't live with the residents. He just kind of builds the place and moves on to the next one. But he's doing a very experimental neighborhood in which he is still there, and that might be messing with things. So they try to work out the problem. Meanwhile, Eleanor is confronted by Jianyu, who has noticed something is amiss. He says, "You don't belong here." And Eleanor's like, "Yeah, I know. Please don't tell anyone." And he's like, "You gotta help me. Neither do I."
Oh.
Turns out that Jianyu is not, in fact, a Buddhist monk either. And
Oh.
is a sort of trailer park boy from Jacksonville
Oh,
named
jeez.
Jason Mendoza, a diehard fan of the Jacksonville Jaguars and
Oh,
just
jeez.
overall kind of low society kind of dude. He's
The
very
vow of silence was totally to cover up.
yes. The vow of silence was entirely to protect his
Hide the fact he doesn't have an accent whatsoever.
My name is Jason Mendoza. Go Jags. So yeah, he's just a total bimbo and like very bad at concealing the fact that he isn't supposed to be there either.
Mm-hmm.
He's very impulsive and dumb, and so they're like, yeah, we should probably figure something out here. So they talk to Chidi, who freaks out a little bit more because
now he has to think about two people who don't belong in the good place.
So he's like, you know what? We're going to teach you guys ethics so you can become good people.
And you can belong here.
And you can belong here. Because if you actually become good people and act like good people, you can hopefully convince them that you do, in fact, get to stay here. And they continue doing that and doing things, trying to become better, not really succeeding. Realizing slowly that the people around them bother them a little more than one might expect from people who are supposedly the best people that have ever been. And Eleanor eventually realizes at the very end of the first season that the good place is not, in fact, the good place at all. It is actually the bad place.
Oh.
And they've been torturing each other this whole time.
Oh.
Oh.
So that's how experimental this is.
He wasn't lying about that part.
Huh.
Eleanor is the one to figure it out, and because there was this crazy series of events leading up to this, like they found the real Eleanor in the bad place and brought her to the good place and like had a talk, and the real Eleanor is of course like an agent of the bad place just acting for this bit to torture them more.
Oh.
And so they were like trying to figure out which Eleanor should stay and things like that. So, but Eleanor caught on. She's like, you know, like, where does it go from here? Like, how does it get worse? This is totally the bad place. Because if this were the good place, we wouldn't be like suffering at all.
Even the auto-corrected speech is somewhat torture-y.
Frustrate them, yeah.
Frustrating, yeah.
Yeah. Chidi, despite being someone who knows a lot of ethics, is like extremely indecisive and can't decide anything. Like, even as simple as which hat to wear. Like, he would be paralyzed by a decision like that and cause so much suffering for people around him because he had no ability to choose things promptly. And that's how he died, even, because he was just like fretting over some decision, and then like a refrigerator falls out of a window and crushes him.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
And Tahani is like overly gossipy and kind of self-absorbed. And so despite being all of these good things that they did, in fact, do on Earth, they caused a lot of negatives by their faults. So Michael is like, ha, 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 you figured it out, and then resets their memories.
Oh.
So, and then we start over. The experiment begins anew.
How many times have they done this?
Well, we'll get there.
Okay.
So they start out again. They change things up a little bit. They give Eleanor a different soulmate, and Eleanor figures it out again. Much, much sooner this time than the first time around. And Michael just keeps repeating this experiment like 800 times. I think it happened several hundred times before the end of things. But meanwhile, his boss in the bad place has thought this whole thing was crocked from the start. He's like, there's no way this is going to work. You'll get 6 months out of this. No way that they're not going to figure it out. And Michael's like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So he's trying to convince his boss that the first attempt is still going swimmingly. And one of his demons, who was the real Eleanor, Vicky, is like blackmailing him behind the scenes to try to like take over his job. So he's like, you know what? Screw it. Humans, you want to team up with me? And so he's like, you guys just keep figuring it out. I can't beat you. You could probably outsmart these demons because I'm about to like get my job taken away from me.
Dang.
So they then proceed to try to escape to the good place. And I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, but there's a medium place inhabited by one person. And she had her own medium place established for her because she was like a severe cocaine addict and like did all this weird stuff. But then like had this super genius life-saving idea and implemented it and like saved a bunch of people and didn't take any of the money herself. So she had like such a catastrophically bad but also extremely good at the same time life, and it just equalized to flat zero. So she got a medium place, which Eleanor had been complaining that there wasn't one like the whole time. So,
Sure.
like, why isn't there a medium place for people like me, you know?
Yeah.
So they eventually get to go to the medium place and have refuge there because neither side can mess with it.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to the afterlife judge, who is responsible for making all of the judgments about people in the afterlife, and plead their case. And she's like, I see. Well, I'm kind of skeptical. Like, this is a pretty small sample size, so let's try it again. And so she reboots them on Earth in their real lives and, like, has Michael go and save them before they die so that they can go on living their lives with a bit of, like, that subconscious morality that they've accumulated kind of stay intact to see if they can be better people on Earth having learned the things they learned. And most of them, like, start out trying to fix their lives and be better about the things they weren't very good at. And eventually they just kind of, like, get sick of it and just go back to their old ways. And so they're like, well, this experiment kind of didn't work. There's just, life is so complicated, you know? And there's this point system that they use to measure whether people go to the good place or bad place, which is essentially utilitarianism. Like, that's the whole idea that
If
they're
one
poking
number
at.
is bigger than the other number, you go to the one place.
Yeah.
Doesn't
And all
matter
of
by
your
how much.
all of your actions are measured out by their net impact, not by your decision considering the circumstances. It's like, if you did a good thing but it caused 5 bad things, you're going to have a net loss of points. And because life is so complicated on Earth, everything you do has negative consequences, regardless of how good the action was. Because it impacts someone or something negatively. And so the people are like, maybe this whole point system thing is flawed. So they go to the afterlife accounting office and kind of look at the formula for what's going on here, and they discover that no one has made it into the real good place for centuries. Not a single person. And so they're like, yeah, this can't be right. Something's got to be up here. So they decide to conduct yet another experiment in which they bring some new subjects into the afterlife, into the fake good place, and see if they can improve this the way the original 4 subjects did. And the bad place gets to pick some of the candidates. So they pick some like really scummy people and dorks and stuff like that to see if they can improve too. And the bad place sabotages the thing pretty badly. They like supply a literal demon disguised as, well, the guy that was Eleanor's second soulmate, because all of the other people in the neighborhood are demons. They're just acting. He's like disguises himself as this old lady and messes with them for a while. And they're kind of like, this doesn't really work either. Because people have to want to change. They have to want to improve. And the guys that aren't supposed to be there don't realize it. They aren't admitting to themselves that they were bad people because they think they were good. And so there's still a lot of complication. There's still a lot of human elements. Michael kind of had a meltdown before it, so Eleanor took over as the architect and ran the show for that experiment. And because she was, a human and not a immortal being, things were not run optimally. So the experiment ends. They go back to the judge, and she's like, yeah, no, this is crap. I'm going to erase the Earth and start over.
Oh.
This is all just too complicated. I don't want to mess with it. We're gonna hit the reset button here. and they have to convince her not to and hide the Earth detonator in various Janets. Because there's good place Janets and bad place Janets and neutral Janets, all played by the same actress
Nice.
simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Darcy Carden does a really good job. Just like being 5 different characters at once. And there's a random disco Janet for some reason.
Just for fun.
Why not?
Because why not? And they convince her not to and propose an alternate solution in which people who die get a chance to go to kind of this sort of like the original Good Place neighborhood and have the opportunity to learn about their mistakes and try to improve. And they can take a test to prove that they've grown, and if they pass, they get to go to the real Good Place. And so they eventually accept that proposal, and the original 4 people get to go to the Good Place because they've already proven themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So they ship off to the Good Place, and it's all good. It's full of nice and fun and good things. And Michael is kind of out of a job now because he was a former Bad Place architect, and he doesn't really have anything to do. So the Good Place architects are like, hey, why don't you come be an architect here? And he's like, okay. At which point they promptly ditch him and leave him to be the only Good Place architect, because while the 4 humans are sort of going around and getting acquainted with the Good Place, they have a casual chat with Hypatia of Alexandria, who is wearing a Jacksonville Jaguars jersey for some reason. And she's like, yeah, this whole afterlife thing is great because you can just have whatever you want from Earth, you know? But when you square that against infinity, everyone gets bored eventually. And so everyone in the Good Place is super depressed, and everybody hates it. They're like, the Bad Place, the Good Place architects, excuse me, are like, have been struggling to solve this problem for ages. Like, basically forever, because they have infinity. And now that they have someone else to try to deal with it, they can escape their responsibility and pin it all on Michael.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
And so they try to come up with a better solution, and they kind of maintain the core idea where you can, you know, experience all of the joys and on Earth and things you never got to do and all of that fun stuff. But they also give you an option to basically go into nirvana, where you just dissolve into the universe and your essence dissipates.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one by one, the humans sort of get their fill of afterlife funsies, and when they're ready to be done, they go through the door, and that's it. And eventually all of them do, except for Tahani, who decides to become an architect herself and continue making fun neighborhoods. Yeah, that's kind of it.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Give me your thoughts so I can drink whiskey.
The theology, well, there's the
The theology's whacking this.
well,
obviously.
the theology is non-existent.
Right.
This is like atheistic afterlife. Well, not atheistic, but like that wasn't what the show was trying to do.
No.
Yeah, it's not what it's about.
This is like a purely philosophical, ethical sort of afterlife scenario.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Is
using
my
the
impression.
afterlife as an example of human nature almost, you know.
Yeah. So it sort of avoids the question.
It does
As much
poke
as that
fun at a lot of like the way that some people think about it, though.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
just like,
Because it's
Where
a
it's
comedy
like-
series after all.
yeah, it is. It's definitely a comedy.
So it's not meant to be like super serious, like Dan Brown novel type crap. It's supposed to be sort of a thought experiment, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like the whole idea that if the afterlife is eternal but also consists exclusively of human things, it's only natural that you get bored of it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because we
And
get bored
that's
of
the
things.
conception of heaven that a lot of people have. It's like, oh, I get to be reunited with my dog and my grandma. And, well, to an extent you do if your grandma goes to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, the beatific vision of the infinite God for all eternity.
Mm-hmm.
You need something infinite to satisfy infinity.
Yeah.
Right.
So I suppose that's like the main thing that the show zeroes in on, albeit in a sort of strange way.
But also in terms of zeroing in, it talks about the point system was interesting to me because it was like,
Yes.
it's not about your personal disposition and relationship. It's not about you being a good person. It's about the things that you do.
It's a very consequentialist
Yeah.
way
Right.
of addressing things, which they also, over the course of the show, realize is ludicrous and absurd,
Mm-hmm.
and they strive to change
Because
it.
it is.
Because it is.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, on the flip side of things, Chidi is a Kantian deontologist, which is fancy words for principles are the only thing that matters, screw the consequences.
Yep.
Right.
And that contributes to why he's so indecisive, because he has this moral intuition that me doing a thing that causes evil is evil.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But he
There's
also
no-
believes in strict principles that he can't break under any circumstances.
So no double effect for this guy.
No.
Mhm.
He is, I mean, he's not a very strict Kantian. Like,
Hence, he didn't tell people that when he thought they were in the good place that these people didn't belong there.
he really wanted to be honest, but he knew that by confessing they would suffer for it.
Mm-hmm.
They would be essentially eternally damned by his doing so,
Mm-hmm.
and he would like to avoid that. If you were a strict Kantian, you would have just told immediately without hesitation.
Yep.
So, despite his sort of intellectual position, he has this moral intuition that there's more to it than that. And, you know, being a strict, principle-based decision maker is not the right way to go either. So if you can't judge solely on the consequences and you can't judge solely on the principles, what are you supposed to do?
Mhm.
And the argument it implicitly makes is for virtue ethics, which is the striving toward growth of your morality through different opportunities to make yourself better.
Mhm.
Based off of what you know at the time. And because, I mean, there's always going to be unforeseen consequences to your actions.
Yeah.
But then,
They take into account the disposition of your heart and the way that things pan out in the end. If it's super obvious that something bad is going to happen from you doing something, then
And you choose to do it
and
anyway.
you choose to do it anyway, that will count against you.
Mhm.
But if you make the right decision and, you know, you make your best weighing moral exercise and you make a decision and some weird thing down the road that you couldn't have possibly foreseen, well, that shouldn't count against you.
Mhm.
because you only know what you know.
Yeah, you know.
You know? You know, when they'll know, you'll know, you know?
What are you talking about?
So I guess, what were some highlights of the show for you then? Besides, I mean,
Aside from the philosophy, which you
Yeah.
enjoy.
Yes, I like the philosophy a lot. Being a philosophy student right now.
it's right up your alley.
The
The
plot
philosophy
twist
alley.
at the end of season 1 was really good. I really
Mhm.
liked that. It's kind of blew you away, and then you slowly started realizing, yeah, I see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, just sort of implicitly deconstructing all these bad philosophies that exist out there,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
making a surprisingly strong argument for virtue ethics,
Yeah.
which almost nobody espouses anymore,
Strangely enough.
strangely enough.
I mean,
moral relativism is the dominant moral philosophy in, for all practical purposes.
does
in
it
the world.
address that at all?
No.
But I mean, if you are
Because it establishes that there exists some objective morality by which people are judged.
Oh, okay, sure.
Even though
right.
it's hot trash,
Mm-hmm.
consequentialism, utilitarianism is bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just a dumb philosophy.
Mhm.
It exists.
Yeah.
And there is
As
an
a philosophy.
objective standard by which people are judged.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really tackle that.
Right. If it's advocating moral growth, it implies that there's a direction you are growing from and growing toward.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just for you.
right.
Yeah. Let's see, utilitarianism and that sort of thing sort of began like kind of early 1800s
It
or
was more like the,
17
the
late
late
17.
1600s.
yeah.
John Stuart Mill was kind of the big guy for that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
A lot of philosophies begin as something that on the surface sounds great, but when you scrutinize it further, it's like this is actually not a great idea.
And maybe they sound great at first because there's some element of the truth in them,
Uh-huh.
but like they're an isolated part of the truth that they hyper focus on, and it's like no, it doesn't work like that, like just like that.
Mhm. And
Right.
bend it and tweak it to their own.
Yes,
And
the utilitarianism has the whole consequences. Does a good come from it? Does a bad come from it? Right,
Right.
and that's part of the whole, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah, it doesn't account for the complicating factors.
A lot of the Enlightenment project was how should people act? Like,
Mm.
how should we do things? Not what's the practical way to do life? It's like take every variable out of the equation. How should we do things as a purely rational being? And like from an intellectual standpoint, that's kind of interesting to wonder about. But it has no real practical application in
No.
real life.
because you're never going
Because
to
the way that
across-
things ideally ought to be are not possible to achieve.
right
Mhm.
in a finite broken universe, there's no way anything can become infinite and perfect
I'm-
through
yeah.
the actions of a finite and imperfect being.
Interestingly, so you've got your utilitarianism that's very black and white and very this is what's true all the time everywhere, and then on the other end of the, which is purely logical focused,
Right.
but then on the emotional spectrum, on the other end of things, it's like there's relativism where it's like it doesn't really matter, it's just how you feel and nothing is, it's all gray, no black and white, where it's
Yep.
like the truth exists somewhere in the middle where it's like you can't apply the harsh black and the harsh white to everything all the time, but there's also there
There are
is a
occasion-
black and a white.
Right.
It's just harder to find. You gotta zoom in and find little dithered
sometimes
dots.
sometimes your vision is blurred. Like it's there if you look close enough, but sometimes you just don't have the faculties to look close enough to make the absolute best decision.
Mm-hmm.
An excellent decision.
Excellent.
So
I'm excited for the Mob Psycho episode.
I'm
we'll
excited
eventually
for
do.
it.
That'll
Yeah.
be a fun one. Anyway,
anyway, so yeah, I think, and I believe utilitarianism is sort of what began the notion of the end justifies the means, or no,
The end justifies the means was Machiavelli
Machiavelli.
in like the 1200s.
okay.
So, but it's sort of a the logical conclusion of the end justifies the means is utilitarianism.
Yeah. And so, like, on that metric, if the end is not justifiable, then it was a bad act. But if it is justifiable, then it is a good act, more or less. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Some any particularly interesting characters other than the ones we've discussed? that-
Eleanor is like the main
Eleanor,
character.
yeah.
Eleanor is
character.
the main character. She is sort of like a typical Arizona white trash. Sort of
Mhm.
works at pyramid schemes and sells chalk to elderly people for a living that's
Mhm.
marketed like it's medicine, but it's not medicine because they
It won't
can't
hurt
legally
them,
call
but
it
it
medicine
won't.
because it doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sort of things like that. But she starts to grow in a relationship with Chidi just by them thinking about the deep questions in life together.
Mhm.
And, he sort of devoted his life to it. and he sees her pursuing the ultimate meaning, the ultimate answers, and they just sort of start to gravitate to each other because of that. So they start to form this really interesting relationship through philosophy. And they eventually like get quasi married in the good place and all that stuff towards the end, but it's just like a really cool way that their relationship began. It's just by really pondering what the whole meaning of life is. What is this about? And going through all these ordeals together. Another interesting one is Jason and Janet. And Jason is, of course, a total dummy, and Janet is an omniscient, omnipotent, not a girl. So
A being.
a being,
Yeah.
a Janet. There is no other way to describe it. It's a Janet. And Janet sort of like becomes more and more human as the series goes on.
Interesting.
She was a real good place Janet that they stole from the Janet warehouse to use for the initial torture neighborhood. But she ended up being too useful, like, because Janet sort of like is omnipotent and can do anything you want. So she was very useful to them in carrying out their plans and getting information and all that. But by spending more and more time with the humans, she becomes more like them. And despite being like a pretty much emotionless being at the start, she starts to adopt human emotions that she kind of doesn't understand, but also realizes she doesn't have to.
Yup.
Interesting.
Well,
One thing that when you were mentioning it, I found interesting was toward the end when they established the good place transition place. It was definitely not a perfect analogy, but it was very
Purgatory-esque.
very purgatory-esque.
there were elements of that.
You are headed to the good place. You just need some work done before you get there. You need to.
Yeah.
You're not perfect, and that's why you're not going there.
It's an interesting
yet.
borrowed concept.
So it's not like a perfect parallel because the good place isn't the perfect heaven parallel, but like there's this middle
nothing
place,
is the perfect
this
anything
transitional place.
parallel.
Right.
Except for maybe the hell.
But I found the purgatory equivalent to be interesting that they mentioned because not everyone's ready for the good place, right?
So it sort of
die.
inadvertently makes the case for such a place, which people debate about.
The other very interesting character for me is Michael, who, of course, is a demon in reality, but
don't know
only insofar as, like, that's the name the humans ascribe to him. He's like, I'm not a demon like the way you think about. Like, I'm just an immortal bad place person. That's just my job, and always has been.
Always has been.
I'm not, like, an inherently evil person, but he still has, like, very evil inclinations.
Hence why he works for the bad place.
That's why he works for the bad place. So, like, as he's first teaming up with the humans, he's, like, accidentally torturing them all the time without even realizing it.
Oh, jeez.
He's, like, trying to learn how to be good. He just ends up accidentally causing them suffering
Oh, jeez.
for fun. So... But he eventually, like, continues to work at it and try to become better. And, of course, eventually, at the end, he becomes a good place architect. So, proving that even they can change in this universe. Which, of course, we know not to be true of demons in the Christian understanding.
Yeah. So
Because
suffice it, the things this show leaves out, I suppose before we go into the truth, well, as we go into truth, I suppose. Obviously, there's a God, and then angels.
They don't rule out the possibility that there's
True.
a God.
They just also don't.
They don't
Make
affirm
it a
it
point.
either.
Right. Angels made their decisions once for all eternity, so there would be no demon going to the good place. That is not going to happen. Obviously, utilitarianism is crap, like we discussed.
which
So that's
which
not-
they of course like thoroughly emphasize that
Mhm.
the fact that it sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is
and there you will be judged upon your demise, and you'll
depending upon the judgment, it may not actually be your demise, but
true. There are near-death experiences, I suppose, that people have had, allegedly. But yeah, there's a few things, and then
this show, it seems, is more a philosophical,
yeah, it's a thought experiment.
a philosophically geared show than a theologically geared show. So you kind of
Yeah, so
have to
bear that in mind.
go into the show expecting that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess
Another thing you should expect is it does have some raunchy humor.
oh,
So
Oh yeah, it's an
it's an NBC
it's a
TV
network
show.
comedy show.
Yeah.
It's going to be there if you're sensitive to that. Can't recommend,
Mhm.
especially Mindy, who's the medium place lady.
uh-huh.
Yeah, just like fast forward through Mindy's parts if you're gonna watch it and you're sensitive to that stuff.
Okay.
Mhm.
So keeping all these things in mind, then, what are some truths we can take out of it as Catholics?
Utilitarianism is garbage.
It's bonkers.
Mhm.
Deontology, well, it's looking for the right thing. It's off the mark. The right way to go is virtue ethics.
So,
That is essentially the Catholic position.
so
Grow in virtues, make an effort to be better. You will fail.
mhm.
Try again.
It's part of being human.
Yes, but the fail as long as you don't.
As long as you don't persist in failure and submit to failure. Just get up and try again.
Which, when the characters went back to Earth and they persisted in failure, they failed that test.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And the persistence after failure in itself is a virtue.
Right.
Right. Not in failure, but toward
After
after
failure.
failure.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Just
Yeah.
although-
Clarifying language. Yeah. What are some other stuff? I guess things we can pull out of it as truths.
Philosophy is a really great way to get to know people.
There you go.
Well, philosophy is inherently of the mind and of the soul, right? So it's like you go, if you talk about philosophy to somebody else, you're going to learn something about their worldview and what they know and how they believe.
Mm-hmm.
If you're both earnestly searching for the truth, you're sort of bearing the state of your soul and what even a soul is and what
Mhm.
even life is, and
Mm-hmm.
you're really getting to the heart of things.
Yeah. And then it was like, I think Chidi, right, with his indecision.
Yeah.
It can be tempting, I suppose, like that sort of
To
dives-
over intellectualize
over-intellectualize, but also be indecisive in your life, where sometimes, like, with virtue ethics, you got to make the best decision and go for it and then learn from the consequences instead of having constant crippling FOMO and not being able to make a decision and deal with the consequence because you're afraid of the consequences.
Right. Because sometimes you don't like either candidate on the ballot, but you kind of have to vote which one's the
Mhm.
worst, not the worst.
It's like I could
know?
stay in this job or I could go to a different job, but I don't know which one's better for me and how I don't know. So, or like different things like that, over like discerning things for ages and ages.
For Chidi, it's more over rationalizing because he's like,
Ah,
I have to make the most objectively,
I see.
philosophically correct decision.
Mhm.
I can't do something irrational that
Mhm.
would be inconsistent with who I am.
Yep.
And that's also a danger. It's just like way overthinking things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like make a decision based on what you know. And if
Mhm.
you're wrong, you're wrong. But you have to choose.
And if you're wrong,
Right.
you can learn from that and grow from that in virtue.
Mhm. So I'm presented
Don't
with
over rationalize, don't over emotionalize. Take the middle road.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Be a phenomenologist.
Yeah. it's over. I have the middle ground. And I suppose you got to contrast this too a bit, because sometimes there are morally black and white issues, but
Well, absolutely.
splitting the difference is not what the middle ground means.
Right.
And it's
It
the
is
middle ground.
rejecting both wrong positions.
Yeah. It's the balance between two extremes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we mean when we say like truth lies somewhere in the middle. it's, you know,
It's not capitulating to the things of either side that are
both wrong.
both wrong. It's rejecting the things that are wrong and accepting the things that are right.
So if you ever hear a hypothetical question between one bad thing and another bad thing, and you can only choose two of them, just say, why not the middle of...
Why not multi-track drifting? That reminds me of a sequence where Michael is taking Chidi through various trolley problems, like in real life, where he like makes them appear, and he's like puts him in a trolley with his hand on the lever, and there's like scenarios, and he's like, Michael, you're torturing me again, aren't you?
That's pretty good.
That's good.
The trolley problem is awfully prolific, isn't it?
It's a
That
Did
that
you
might be
get
a
that
little.
game?
That might be a little bit of foreshadowing.
Oh,
No, I didn't buy it,
oh okay.
but I was thinking about it. It might be a
Um,
little foreshadowing for a few weeks from now.
Yep.
yes. We
Um,
might get a little
philosophical.
Philosophical.
One might say.
One
Yes.
might say, yeah.
Although oddly, this show we're talking about wouldn't fall into that.
It would be...
It would not.
which is
It only ran for 4 seasons, so it wouldn't be super serial, but it was
semi-serial.
serial.
it's serialized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway,
that's got a foreshadowing out of the way. Oh goodness. What sort of goodness can we find in The Good Place?
the different characters and their growth morally is just
Hmm.
very good to see. Defeating their deficiencies and
Showing that the fact that like good and evil do matter,
yes.
Mm-hmm.
and it matters that people try to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And growing in goodness. Yeah, is like
That's
the point.
sort of a unique thing among a lot of television shows these days.
Particularly comedy shows.
Yeah.
A lot of comedy shows just like to have characters they can consistently write for 12 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So don't change too much.
I respect a show that has an endpoint
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it sets boundaries that the show can stay within and develop within.
It's the flavor of the show is so different from your standard network comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like a laugh track sitcom or even like an Office sort of thing. Even though it's
Mockumentary.
written by the guy who did The Office.
Mhm.
So
Which makes sense. I suppose this is also a
By the way,
NBC.
what does the spin-off that you learned about today in your research cover?
I'm not exactly
Who does
sure,
it follow?
but I think it follows Sean, who is Michael's Bad Place boss.
Okay.
He's
Oh.
the big boss of the Bad Place.
I see.
And so, like, what the eventual agreement was is that the Bad Place people are in charge of providing the opportunities for people to grow, so to speak, and
clever.
finding ways to torment them
I
that
see.
give them an opportunity to be better.
That's sort of
So
that's an interesting little bit. It's like the people who give you a hard time in your
He's
life
like-
are giving you opportunities to grow be a better person.
He has never had as much fun as he's having right now. He's like on the same end of things. He's like, all of these excruciating tortures we put people through in the Bad Place were fun for a few eons.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually doing the same thing over and over just got boring.
So is the show going to be called The Bad Place or Shaun of the Dead?
That very well might be a reference, honestly.
Yeah, that's funny. I like that.
But I think it's spelled differently. Shaun of the Dead is UN, isn't it?
Is it
W-N?
S-C-A-N?
I think it's SEAN.
I thought it was
That's the proper spelling.
Wait, it
of
might be the
name.
British SHAWN. Hold on.
Well, the Sean from the guy in the Good Place is definitely SHAWN.
Oh, I think it's AWN because that'd be like riffing on Dawn of the Dead.
Sure.
Let me look it up quick with the mighty Google.
And are we past the goodness part? Can we move to beauty?
Yeah, let's get into the beauty.
Yes, it is AWN for the Good Place.
Oh, it's AUN for Shaun of the
I
Dead.
thought
Okay.
so maybe not
Maybe not.
a direct reference, but still funny.
Yeah. Not seen.
Beauty's kind of tricky with this one.
Sure.
There's nothing like super innovative in its visual presentation. Yeah, I don't know.
It's well written.
I mean,
evidently.
it's well written. I would. There's a lot of jokes that could have been done without,
Yeah,
Sure.
but
Which-
likely.
You brought up this show so you could talk about the truth and goodness aspects of it more than the beauty. It's like
that yeah.
now not everything has to
Definitely.
have equal parts of all the.
I would say the
truths.
Good Place neighborhood really does evoke kind of a just a nice, quaint, peaceful feeling.
Yeah.
It does very much what it sets out to do.
Think of
Right.
media that we discuss as like a Cutie Orange. A lot of the time, you'll come across stuff that's mostly fruit, and you can just eat it with no problems. And then every once in a while, you will get one that is apparently 90% pip, and you have every bite is like 10 seeds, which are the bad things you don't want, and those things merit a bit of salt. Maybe not. This is where the analogy breaks down. But
Because you don't
you
have
get
salt
salty.
and orange.
Well,
do
no,
you?
no, no. But you get salty because there's all these things you were expecting.
You
Good
got to
stuff.
peel apart a little more to get to the good stuff. But the good stuff's no less an orange.
Yeah.
This is a weird analogy, James.
Right, but it popped into my head, so I thought I'd
Thank you for sharing.
thank you. You're welcome. Anyhow,
So yeah,
unity.
beauty isn't a strong point. So unity.
Philosophy.
What? Yeah. What does this as part of? What does this
what
reveal
does-
about the
does
whole
Bruno
of
Mars is
existence?
gay?
What does this
I
reveal?
does
about,
it have to know.
what does this part
have?
have to reveal about the whole in the human experience?
You gotta try.
Mhm.
You gotta try to be better, and it's possible to do.
And try
Life is
as
really
in
complicated.
make an honest
Make
effort,
it
not say,
honest,
"Oh, I'm trying,"
concerted.
and not actually make an effort.
Yes, that is true. And it's possible. Life is really complicated. It makes it really hard to be good. You remove a lot of those things, and it makes it easier to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why the church does so much philanthropic work and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, social
The big
to try to remove those things that
emphasis on human
are
charity.
a barrier to living a moral and upright life.
Mhm.
So really clamping down on vices isn't so much keeping you from having a good time, it's helping you to be more alive.
Clamping down on vices.
Huh?
Yeah.
That's another one of my unintentional puns.
I know it was unintentional because I'm like, huh.
First one of the year for you guys listening to this, I guess.
Well, last one of the year. I hope it isn't the last one of the year.
No,
We
I
still
imagine
gotta
for you, there's
sell a couple
probably
hours.
a few you've probably got up your. Well, I would say you're wearing a t-shirt, but
I mean, I've got short sleeves, but I can pack a lot in there.
yeah. Yes. Cool. Anything else to add, gentlemen? Well, thank you for listening to us in 2020. It was a wild year, and we are grateful that you chose to drown your sorrows with our work in progress presentation. You can find us in this year of our Lord 2021 and in
And beyond.
years, and beyond, God willing. At Palladium at Palapapus on Facebook and Twitter. You can listen to episodes on Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. And you can also email us with your questions, concerns, comments, complaints, or suggestions for new episodes at palladiumpapus@gmail.com.
Really need the exit script.
I need to have the exit.
Just make it.
I have an ad-libbed exit script. I just need to write it down and make it a thing.
You also should probably, your New Year's resolution should be actually posting and promoting our show on Twitter and Facebook.
That's the thing I should have talked about in the banter, was like New Year's resolutions, but I feel like everybody does that.
Yeah, we're not like the other podcasts.
We're not like other podcasts.
We don't flout the fact we know other podcasters, because we don't.
we don't.
The only other
We're
podcasters
vaguely
we-
acquainted with one priest that has his own podcast.
Yeah. Wait.
They
Oh, sort of.
sort of,
Tangentially.
yeah, vaguely acquainted.
I know several priests I would gladly make a podcast for, but whether or not that's going to happen. Regardless. We pray for all of you that God may bless you in this new year, and let's make it the best year we can. It's as good as we make it, and yeah, that didn't come out nearly as.
Look forward to seeing all two of you in the new year.
Yes, and help us grow in this new year. And there's exciting stuff coming up for the podcast, so stay tuned. Farewell.
Bye.
Adios.